Attention, please. Eastern Airlines Flight 19, now ready for departure.
Welcome aboard the Walt Disney World Express monorail. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we're entering the vacation kingdom of the world.
There's enough land here to hold all the ideas and plans we could possibly imagine. We call it Epcot. Will be our experimental prototype city of tomorrow.
Welcome to another episode of the Retro Disney World Podcast, taking you back to the vacation kingdom of the world, the way it was, and the way it is in your memories.
All right, welcome to another episode of the Retro Disney World Podcast, the official podcast of the Lake Buena Vista Historical Society. This is podcast episode 64, Crescent Lake, and we'll be taking you back to the area right around Disney MGM Studios and Epcot, between that area called Crescent Lake, which features the Walt Disney World Swan and Dolphin, as well as the Yacht and Beach Club and the Boardwalk Resort. I did not think we'd have to do talk about this many resorts in one episode, but here we are. So I am your host, Todd McCartney, and sitting with me as always this evening as we record, Mr. JT Kuzier. How you doing tonight, JT?
I'm good. I love this place. It's like it's got that good late 80s, early 90s feel, like into the night. It's one of my favorite areas to go wander around, so I'm excited.
It's got quite a wide variety of architectures, and we've got everything from the 1800s to the, well, we'll talk about it.
And I'm not disappointed by the boardwalk because I never really went to a boardwalk growing up.
We're going to talk about that too. Well, none of us were around in 1890, so that's
I thought it was the 20s.
The 20s. So. All right, and coming into from Tampa, as always, Mr. Hal Bowers. How you doing tonight, Hal?
Aloha, doing fine.
Good. You're excited about this episode too?
Yeah, this is it's funny we were talking about this. I never really, I won't say I was interested in some of the stuff, casually at a time, but I didn't have a deep interest in it. But doing the research on this stuff today, it's like I think we've unearthed a lot of actually really fascinating stuff, and now I'm actually super excited to share. So
I have to admit the same thing. I went down some rabbit holes. I never thought, and we're going to talk. I fell down the FAA aerial database. So, for obstruction. So we're going to talk about that. And
I hate when that happens. I fell down that rabbit hole.
And I believe he has pulled himself out of his own rabbit hole, Mr. Brian P. Miles. How you doing tonight, Brian?
Greetings, salutations, and for those listening to us in real time as we release the episode, Happy New Year.
That's right.
It's good to be back. Thank you, fellas, for soldiering on in my absence last month.
We tried to do what we could. We were lost a little bit without you, but we tried
I'll agree with that. I listened to the episode. It was a little off, but, we're going to amp it up tonight.
Something was missing.
I'm right there with you guys, by the way. When we picked this topic, I threw it out to Todd because this is you will find that my favorite resort on property is the same one as Michael Eisner's, which we're going to talk about tonight. But the same thing. It was like a labyrinth of stuff that we kept, as you started reading. I never expected to spend an entire day delving into the Swan and Dolphin, but I did. And I have a whole new appreciation for the place.
It is different. It does give you a different look. And we hope that everybody, listening in comes away with a different appreciation of all the resorts as well. So we've got a lot of really neat nuggets as we talked about. So some corrections and comments, just real quick on last month, episode 63. We had Ted Linhart was stepped in for Brian Miles last month, and we talked about Project 90. And similar, maybe to this night's episode, this month's episode, we had some people write in and say they weren't expecting much on Project 90, but they were aghast by how much really, really cool information we had and how similar it was to the My Disney experience and different things that they have today. So I know how you and Ted really got along on that one, and we went into some great depths of all the technology. And thanks everybody for writing in too.
Yes, thank you. That was one of those ones where it doesn't seem when you just say Project 90. It doesn't seem like anything.
Yeah, well, what about the 89 that came before it?
Right. That was
and yes,
those are less successful.
And yes, as I listened back to the show that you guys recorded, I was screaming at my speaker when you were talking about credit cards. I'm like, yes, Diners Club was the first credit card.
And I think we had the right date for the American Express traveler's
You did.
check. So
You
we
did.
made sure we got those in there for you. So, yes, Brian, our resident monetary presidential and all things.
Food historian and everything else. Yeah.
We messaged you, but we're glad you're back. And just to add to what Brian said, too, we've got a whole year ahead of us. I know last year we did a lot of things that we wanted to do. We didn't do a lot of things that we wanted to do as well. There's certainly some big episodes that we wanted to hit on that we just didn't have the right resources yet to get to them. So, here's hoping this year we'll certainly bring you some of those hot areas that you've been wanting us to hit on. And this is certainly an episode we've been wanting to do for a while, and getting back to some of the earlier days of Walt Disney World in terms of, or I should say, our roots, right? A little earlier of our roots of how we got started talking about resorts.
Yeah, and Todd, it's a perfect time to say, if you guys are listeners, if you know someone who is Imagineering or ex-Disney who you think is ready to share stories with us, please send us an email at podcast@retrowdw.com, and so we can start making connections. And it, usually takes 2-3 months to go through this, but if you know someone who would be potentially a good guest on the show, please. We're just 4 guys in our houses, and occasionally we have been blessed enough to make connections with folks like Raleigh Crump, and when that happens, it's exciting because we get to hear these stories firsthand, and sometimes stories that no one has ever heard before, and get to share them. But we're just 4 guys in our houses. We didn't work for Disney. We have no instant connections with folks outside of the people that we've already met with. So send them our way.
That's right. That'd be great to hear from. All right, and with that, a lot of people do send us stuff every month, so I'm going to turn it over to JT for the mailbag this month. I know we've got a lot of different things that come in. What came in, JT?
Well, this one is first, thank you for all the messages. They're always fun to look at. So if you are somebody that has always been on the fence of, sending us something, you have a neat story, feel free this year. Do it, because you never know, it might end up on the air, and if it catches one of our eyes or all of our eyes, then we definitely get it on an episode. So first one's from Dane. He says he's our Canadian contest winner. Dane is actually reaching out about the Project 90 episode, and he says that he has a 1976-1977 TV channel guide for the Contemporary. And one thing we mentioned was the camera that shows your children on the playground, or other children. You could basically watch them while you relax in the room with your bucket of shrimp. That didn't exist, though, in 19. That must have only existed either in Project 90, maybe early, but, we don't have anything on the 76-77 guide that shows the playground channel. We do have Channel 1, though. I think it's fun. It's recorded music, so I think that would have been kind of cool to flip on and
it's like your first Muzak channel.
Enjoy the carafe of sangria in your room there at the Contemporary. So thank you, Dane. I will take those images and we can throw those in the show notes. You might actually have those on the site already too. And the last thing he added was there was no TV checkout, as we discussed. Yep. Kevin Parrish wrote us next. Kevin is from North Carolina. He says he got a 1987 burn bomb, and tucked inside was a 15 Years of Magic brochure. Pretty cool there. It's got the Chevy, what is this, the Cavalier?
Cavalier, they were giving away a Cavalier every day.
Yep, 50th anniversary of Snow White ad, the old school Disney Channel logo.
Oh, that's the one with the lines, right? That
yes.
made the Mickey. Yeah, I remember that one.
And then it also has those sweet-looking icons, like on a smartphone, of like River Country and Discovery Island. Looks like a toucan. And there's one on here. It's for the Walt Disney World Shopping Village. It looks eerily familiar to the Lake Buena Vista Historical Society bird. So we'll share that one, Kevin.
Those birds migrate.
Yeah, they go.
They're everywhere. So
they move. I believe. Yeah.
There was I think it was a series of tweets or a blog post sometime in the last. Well, everything in 2020 runs together, so it could be 6 months ago, it could be a year ago. But there was a guy whose grandmother was one of the Cavalier winners.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
And there was a whole thread. I know I shared it with you guys. For a while, my memory was that it had been sent to us, but again, I think it just ran together with a. But his grandmother walked through and was the magic guest of the day. That her ticket won the Cavalier, And the story he told, and he had all the documents and pictures and everything. And I think there was a story in the local paper. But he said that like the dealership called like 3 or 4 times over a span of months before she finally like followed up and all right, I'll pick my car up. Like we'd all get home like, can I pick it up today? And she waited like a series of months.
That's funny.
But he had like the letter from GM and everything there. It was really neat.
That's so
Having
cool.
owned a Cavalier, that might have been a good thing on her part.
Well, that's a good car not to have paid for.
There you
Yes.
go.
And if you own one of these car winners and it's been sitting in your garage untouched, that would be a fun barn find. But I
Yes.
doubt it. I'm sure
That
most
would
people
be.
drive.
That would be.
That you don't. I'll tell you what. In terms of old cars, you sure don't see a lot of Cavaliers on the road anymore. They were not built to last.
I think they went the way of the EV1. A lot of them.
They just were not particularly well built. And the funny thing is that I think they were the successor to the Citation, weren't they?
The Vega.
And the Vega. Okay.
The Vega came out of the same plant here in Ohio, if that tells you anything.
Well, there you go.
Just
But I
imagine.
always liked the Chevy Citation, and that was a very early '80s car.
All right, next up, our old friend Kurt Shamala here. Kurt wrote us in. He lots of ephemera sent our way. I've been throwing out here. He asked us. He searched for breakfast and he didn't find this photo he has, but this is a what is this word? Menahune?
Menahune.
Menahune breakfast. It's like a certificate of attendance for Kurt, 1985, and it's got all the signatures on it from Pluto and Goofy. Mini Pinocchio was at the Polynesian.
And
So-
you got one of those at the Empress Lily, right, Todd? Like when you had the character breakfast at the Empress Lily, they gave you something like that, right?
Yeah, there was. I have to dig that one out, but it was pretty cool.
Yep. So that is from Kurt, and we will also put that in our photo archive. Thank you, Kurt, for
That was the character breakfast or character meal at the Polynesian back then. Yeah.
and
And it was up, if I recall correctly, they did that in 2 locations over the years. Most of it was done up in what is now Ohana's. Back then was the Papipe Veranda. And I believe they also did it over at Tangaroa Terrace.
Terrace,
Yeah, at different times too. So
It moved at different times.
yeah.
And I know we have some autograph hounds out there, so there are 4 1985 autographs for you to see on the site as well. So check that out. Next up, this is from Nate. Nate wrote us through, actually commented on one of our stories, or actually the Project 90 story here, Nate. Nate says he looked up and the Wedway system is still in use as the subway in Houston Airport. It's operated and serviced by another company. He has ridden it a couple times.
I wrote it the summer of 2019. I wrote it.
Okay.
No, there you
And
go.
he says it always feels like some dated area that I'm not supposed to be at because very few people use it.
It is a very dark the kind of the route that you go along, and it very much feels like it was put in 1981 or whenever it was put in. It's just-
I got
Kind of like the monorail system underneath the Capitol. Boy, that thing
Yes,
dates
it-
back
it-
to the
it-
50s or 60s.
That's exactly what it feels like. Have you
Yeah.
ever ridden on that, Todd?
I have twice, and it's interesting.
That's a little. It basically is a people mover that moves people, but from underneath the Capitol building to the 3 office buildings that where the senators and representatives all spend time.
Well, thank you, Nate. We appreciate that. 2 more here. This second to last one is just a quick thank you. We did a little New Year's Eve reach out. We got some voicemails, so thanks to everybody that left us Happy New Year voicemails, and we even got to call some of you and talk to you on New Year's Eve, so that was a lot of fun. For Brian and I did that.
Mm-hmm. That was
Finally, our crown jewel of the mailbag tonight. This actually came in, I'm looking at my time here, 6 hours ago. This is from Jared in Florida, and this is a little lengthy, but I'm going to get through this the best I can, Jared, without reading it word for word. If you're an Alien Encounter fan, this is really cool. He says he just listened to our episode, and the cast members used to call that area the Alien Complex, which included Alien Encounter, Timekeeper, and Astro Orbiter. He actually obviously used to work there. So here we go. One of the positions worked at Alien was to be a cast member who had to be in the chamber with guests during the main part of the show. He says they were actually provided a night vision scope to keep an eye on the guests when it got pitch dark in case anyone was freaking out and trying to leave. If this did happen, we had to squeeze our way through the aisle to this person, and then they had to put an extremely tiny key, he says about the size of like a little suitcase lock key, into a keyhole between the guest's feet near the floor. They would turn the key to raise the shoulder restraints and then could walk the guests out. But usually the show was over by the time you got through all that. So that's super crazy that happened. The other thing was the catwalk up above. That was another position during the show. They walked to the top of the show and had to shine the flashlight on the guests below. The red light was mounted on a hockey goalie helmet with a giant red light on top and other lights at the bottom. It had a switch so when the person was eaten by the alien, we could kill the lights and make a hasty exit before the extremely loud crunching sounds. If they were running both chambers, we had about 5 to 10 minute break between the two catwalks, so they would go back and forth, it sounds like. It's always disappointing during extra hour events or late nights when you had to shine the light on nearly an empty theater, even though the video was showing a full crowd down there, because I think that part was like pre-recorded, basically. He says his best memory of working there was grad nights. I think we could do a whole episode on grad night stories for adults only. He says he used to take extra water to the catwalk and really throw it on the guests when the aliens would explode. I'm imagining like a full cup, just bloodbath. He says one grad night they were shut down when one of the teens threw a turkey leg into the main tube where the alien was. Just wing that. I thought Howard would like that. He says, by working these 3 attractions, not only did I have the pleasure of attempting to explain exactly what the heck Alien Encounter was, but when I was at the timekeeper, I had to try and explain that as well, while trying to herd people into the show. And then, obviously, he did Astro Orbiter, he says, too. He says people get to the top and say they thought this was for the Peoplemover. So, that was a great email. I know it was long, Jared, but we appreciate that. He wants us to do a Pleasure Island episode soon. And
that's all Hal Bowers.
Yeah.
Yes. I'll tell you for now, Jared, if you haven't looked on our YouTube channel, go check that out. We have lots of good Pleasure Island stuff on there. Everything from the New Year's Eve countdown to Adventures Club, lots of good stuff. So, all right, that's going to close Mailbag. Write us anything you want, questions, comments, concerns, stories, memories, podcast at retrowdw.com. Any and all message has a chance to get on the show. We try to reply to everybody, and if we don't get to you, apologies, but we do read them all. So that's it.
All right. Well, we have something special this month. We wanted to give away a copy of the book Boundless Realms by Foxx Nolte. She has written a fantastic book about the Haunted Mansion at Walt Disney World. Now, I read the book, and here's what's really interesting about this, guys. I know how you have the copy of it right now.
I do. I got to dig into it.
It is really good, and
it's so much more than just the Haunted Mansion.
It is. She goes into the history of talking about, the why it may not be the Hudson River Valley, and what was the architecture at the time, what was the kind of macabre feeling of the turn of the century in the 1800s, and why the lights are the way they are, and all these different things. It is truly fascinating, and what's really interesting for the 4 of us geeks, and as well as everybody listening to this podcast, we all know who a lot of these people are. We know who Marty Sklar is, and Claude Coates, and everybody that we've talked about over the years. She says right in the beginning, "I'm not going to tell you who those are. These are for this. This book is for the people who know. You have other places to go to find out." And what's interesting is it changes the pace of the book. We have read so many books over the years where you go, oh boy, here we go again. Here's 4 pages on who Marty Sklar is, and no disrespect to him, but we all know what he is. So that changes the pace. But getting back to the book itself, not only does she does a great history of the mansion itself and every single room and area in the room, and she also goes through the architecture. And I'll give one little thing that she came up with, and I just thought this was fascinating, was that what do they say that the mansion was always supposed to be? Hudson River Valley.
Retirement home for ghosts.
Sleepy Hollow and Hudson River Valley, right?
Sorry.
What's really interesting, she dug through all these different aspects of the blueprints, and it turns out the wall in front of the Haunted Mansion is called the seawall. And when she starts to put things together, the Columbia Harbor House, probably because the sailing ship Columbia was going to originally be there, all these other things that as you walk through Frontierland, we know the whole story of crossing the Mississippi. That's Upper New England, and the history of the area, and also the seawall and the building itself most likely would have been representative of a building sitting on the seacoast, rather than actually, in a mountain area or sitting on the river. And she goes into depth of why you're not entering the front door. You're going to the back door where you would be normally greeted in some of these scenarios in these homes. Absolutely fascinating read. I could not put it down, and she's done a fantastic job. So read it, back me up next month on my comments. So it's definitely worth it. It's a great book. And she has announced she is going to be writing another book too on another famous Walt Disney World attraction, specifically Pirates of the Caribbean. So I cannot wait for that one. It's going to be great. So the contest is really simple. All you have to do is send your name. JT, should we do self-addressed stamped envelopes? Do you want to get mail this month, or do you want to do it electronically?
Let's keep it electronic.
All right, we'll keep it electronic.
Don't want to spread the COVID or whatever.
Send us your name to contest@retrodwdw.com. We'll put all received entries into a random drawing, and maybe JT will fire up the old random number generator next month to find out a winner.
Should we put a subject line like spooky or something?
So there we go.
Identify. There you go.
Yeah. Subject line spooky, and then we'll know it's your entry for the Haunted Mansion. So if you could get those entries in before February 8th, 2021. All right, gentlemen, well, it's time for this month's main topic. And as we said at the top of the show, this is all about the Crescent Lake area, the beach and the yacht club, the boardwalk, the Swan and the Dolphin. And as we said earlier, this stuff, man, we went down different paths in different areas that we never thought we would. So, again, it's an area I've been to. I will say that I've only ever stayed at the Dolphin. I've yet to stay at the other resorts, walk through all of them and experience some of the restaurants and things. I know we've got a lot of personal thoughts of the area and how it's been shaped up over the years in the specific hotels themselves. But Brian, I'll turn it over to you. I know we've all got a couple little different things to say at different times here, but you're going to be our ringmaster for this evening. So let's.
I'll be your tram driver.
That's a big part of this tonight. So
on the left of the boardwalk resort.
Can we do that in an event? Have a guest tram driver. We'll close out the parking lot, get some cones. That'd be great.
Noted. We'll put it on the list.
That's on the list. Retro Magic 50. Please keep your hands aside.
Yeah.
Well, gentlemen and ladies in the audience, the story begins long before what we know today as Crescent Lake. And the story really begins in the early 1980s as Disney was building Epcot. The tenure of Ron Miller as chairman of the company, right? And Ron Miller was CEO, and Card Walker was the chairman. And they were under pressure to develop more hotels in the Walt Disney World Resort. And they did not want to build hotels. Part of this, a running theme in this story, at least as we discuss the development of the areas and the ultimate Swan Dolphin and design of the resort area, will be the Marriott Corporation, because the Marriott Corporation was a potential bride like 3 different times in the 1980s. But the first time that they experienced it, Card Walker had met with Bill Marriott, who is still the chairman of the Marriott Corporation. It's like 85 years old or 90 years old, something like that. His dad is the one that founded the Marriott Corporation. They met in the early 80s to discuss a hotel deal. And at the time, Marriott asked for the meeting. And Card Walker told them, well, hey, we're not in the hotel business. We're in the park business. And Bill Marriott looked at him and said, why? And Card Walker was a little stumped by the question. Because from a hotelier's perspective, we're starting at hotels because that's what drives all this. the hotels that Disney did own at the time, which were the Contemporary and the Polynesian and the golf resort, they were always nearly at total occupancy. And anyone who owned hotels or was in the hotel business knows that's not common. Normally, a lot of hotels are either empty during the weeks or empty on the weekends, or you're running at 50, 60%. Disney hotels were consistently always full or close to being full. So from a hotel business perspective, the professional hotel men were looking, saying, why don't you have more hotels? I mean, you're leaving all this business to the people outside. Here's a side note. That was not the real reason that Marriott asked for the meeting. Marriott asked for the meeting because they were considering a takeover bid for Disney. They were considering buying Disney. At the time, Marriott owned restaurants and all kinds of other things. Natural fit. Disney was an attractive property for a hotel company to buy because they had 27 square miles and they could go there and build a whole bunch more hotels. Marriott ultimately decided that Disney was too big an undertaking for them, which is funny today because Marriott's just gigantic, and so is Disney. But at the time, Marriott thought that Disney was too much for them. So Ron Miller, Card Walker, the two guys running the company in the early 80s, really didn't want anything to do with the hotel business. But they did want to build Epcot Center. And so when they were putting the construction deal together for Epcot, they hired the Tishman Corporation from New York City. And Tishman was one of the premier construction management firms in the world at the time. Very experienced in doing big projects. They had done the World Trade Center in New York City, and there's a list of 50 other things that they were the main construction managers on. And what a construction manager does, if you don't know, they're not the actual people who do the building, but they make sure that the subcontractors are doing what they're supposed to doing, that the budget is staying on target, that the construction dates are being met. And one of the side stories is when they hired Tishman, Card Walker, Tishman said, well, opening dates are, construction is always delayed. It's never on time. So October 1st, like, when do you really want it open? October 1st, 1982. Like, what is the real opening date? And Card Walker said, well, I know you get delays sometime. It can be October 1st, 1982 at 9:02 a.m. We'll give you 2 extra minutes. So as you all know, it did open on October 1st, 1982. But part of the deal to get Tishman to do the construction management job here was there was a rider on their contract that they would get to build convention hotels on Disney property at some point. It was like an option. So let's fast forward a few years. Ron Miller and Card Walker, Card Walker's still there, but Ron Miller is out as CEO, replaced in a boardroom coup by Michael Eisner and the Disney president, Frank Wells. So Eisner comes in, and within 2 weeks, he sees the Tishman proposals for these boxy concrete hotels that were going to be built behind Epcot, and said, no way. I don't want this. He was, early in his tenure, I'm talking in the first couple of weeks, determined to get out of the hotel deal with Tishman, decided it was a bad deal. So Michael Eisner meets with Bill Marriott. He calls Marriott up and figures, you know what? I'm going to meet with Marriott. We're going to make a better deal with them. They're going to be our hotel people. So what he wanted to set up was a deal where Disney would own the hotels, but Marriott would operate them. So Marriott puts on a big dog and pony show. They start working on a deal with him. He hates their designs too. We'll come back to that. So they negotiated for about a year. And then while this is going on, Eisner sees Imagineering's designs for the Grand Floridian. And so he's deep into these negotiations with Marriott, and he decides, you know what? I don't need Marriott or Tishman. We can build our own hotels. In fact, his quote to one of the guys on the team was, we'll make our mistakes, but they'll be our own mistakes, and we'll learn from them, and we won't make them a second time. So Marriott was really upset. They're disappointed. Tishman was significantly more upset because he sued them for $371 million for breach of contract and $1 billion in punitive damages. So Eisner, being from Hollywood and being a a Hollywood studio mogul, was no stranger to lawsuits. He sits down with his legal counsel, and they look at him and say, "You're going to lose. There's absolutely no way you can win this suit. You are stuck with the Tishman deal. There is no way out of it." So you're in your time frame here, like 1985, 86. They end up spending almost 2 years negotiating with Tishman on what they're going to do.
And at this time, we only have what, the Grand Floridian is under construction by this time, right?
And you're correct. That's there. 88. And then while that's going on, so they settle 2 hotels. Tishman's going to get to build. They'll be next to Epcot. Tishman would control the construction budget, but part of Eisner's concessions was Disney would determine the design and service standards, which essentially meant Disney controlled everything, and basically Tishman had to build what Eisner wanted. So Eisner, and I'm going to come back to the Disney hotels here. Eisner wanted Michael Graves and Robert Venturi, 2 very famous architects of the age, to design it together. Venturi was the senior member of the team. He didn't really want to share, so he suggested that they have a contest, and they did. Michael Graves and Venturi both submitted designs. Tishman's architect, Alan Lapidus, whose father designed the Fontainebleau and the Eden Rock in Miami, he submitted his designs, and Imagineering submitted potential designs too. Eisner loved Michael Graves' design, which was a pyramid and a vault, but asked him to lighten them up, and that's what led to the statues of the swan and the dolphin fish on top. Now, I say it's a dolphin fish. I don't know if we're going to talk about this. I have seen what a dolphin fish looks like. That's mahi-mahi, and it looks like if you imagine a fish with a nose that ran into a window and it's all smushed up in the front, it's like the fish that's on the roof of the dolphin looks nothing like a dolphin fish.
To me, it looks like a Disney fish.
Yeah.
Like a cartoon fish.
Kind of the official line is that it's based off of like old drawings on nautical maps of fish that you would sometimes see around like the legends at the bottom, which kind of look like that. So it is styled in a manner of sort of this, early explorer.
Isn't there some story about the statue being unveiled in front of Eisner before they lifted it up onto the roof and then being like, "What is this? This is not a dolphin." I swear I've seen or read that story.
It's actually, now that I look at it, it's really something kind of out of Dr. Seuss, like where it would walk on its head across land. So how you mentioned the we were just talking about the dolphin fish and the dolphin and how whimsical they were. This excerpt I found comes from a book called Everything by Design: My Life as an Architect by Alan Lapidus. And this is what he has to say about that. He says, "Normally a building's high point is where we put lightning rods, since that is where lightning likes to go. Michael Graves would not hear of such a crass and unlovely appendage to his elegant birds. Okie dokie. To add a cherry on the cupcake, a building's high point is usually decorated with a flashing red light to discourage low-flying aircraft from arriving in an ungraceful manner. At this point, I didn't even bother asking Michael Graves about what I was planning. I figured there was no sense in letting these 2 gigantic birds just squat there, letting them do so. I figured there was no sense in letting these 2 gigantic birds just squat there. Let them do something. So I converted them into 40-foot-high lightning rods complete with flashing red eyes. I'm not making this up. We could layer metal mesh in the molds of the fiberglass and we poured into the same principle used in the most modern airplanes made of carbon fiber and other forms of fiberglass, which protects them from lightning strikes. The most up-to-date aircraft on the market today, including many private airplanes," and the excerpt cuts out there. So the swan's eyes light up and it's a lightning rod?
I've never seen the eyes lit up. Maybe when lightning hits it.
It has to be just the right time, and then it asks you if you're the keymaster.
I mean, this is, ladies and gentlemen, you listening, these are the rabbit holes we were talking about, that it just continues like we never thought. So I need to find this Everything by Design book.
The only way you can get that kind of power is from a bolt of
lightning. We never know where one's going to strike.
We do now.
The swan.
And his eyes light up like the devil.
Like,
Right when
shoots
the lightning
laser
hits.
beams.
See what you learn on this show, folks.
Swans with red devil eyes.
Eisner, only soon.
So if there are boots on the ground in the Orlando area, do us a favor, get out your telephoto lens and let's check out these swan eyes. I mean,
Bio reconstruct. Please do a flyby.
yeah, we need a
Flyby
nighttime flyover. So.
Oh my gosh.
Going on a little bit more on the FAA too, there was some other research done, and there's different obstruction standards, and it could have been done to as how you mentioned the light of the building. The Stolport was closed down by that time, so you weren't near an airport or anything, and it's probably some sort of mix of not being near an airport and everything else. So who knows? But those. The devil eyes are there, and the devil eyes and the swan. So, all right. So, Brian, I want to talk a little bit about the layout and another rumor that has circulated that we probably should put to rest too. People think that the dolphins and the swans were put atop the wrong building. And do you know why?
Because of the paint on the building. I read
Yeah, exactly.
The
Right.
dolphins on one with waves, and the swans are on one
with the land,
or opposite. Or
Now you could have a
opposite.
theory that if I'm staying in the dolphin, I want to feel ocean, and I look across and I see waves. If I'm staying swans with land, I look across, I see land. Right? I could do that. So apparently, there's a story that goes through that with this too. That so there was a volcano under the water, and basically an upheaval. That came up under the ocean and lifted this piece of land, and the dolphins were trapped on top of it. A waterfall began and trickled and ran. That's the waterfall coming down, which is the front of the Dolphin Hotel there, and then splashed across to a nearby island. And so the waves that you see are that water coming down the mountain, splashing against the island where the swans. Now, apparently Michael Graves had some sort of story with it, and it really basically went to his grave with him. So kind of interesting. I mean, I'm sure there's other accounts of what they think, the story was. Some people say that the swans were transfixed. They decided to take a closer look and were turned to stone. And others say that swans just decided to hang out there because it was a cool place, So
That sounds like a load of balloons.
I know.
That whole. I mean, the theme of those two resorts, there is a theme, and the theme is water. And
Right,
so
right.
Swans being animals that go on the water, and dolphins being animals that are in the water. They both were, according to Graves, it's like those that both kind of personified the water theme, because his edict from Eisner was to do something that was entertaining, but he was not allowed to use the characters. Like, he couldn't use the regular Disney characters, so he had to come up with something that was, different from that, but still had that same level of engagement that Graves saw in the parks with kids and the characters. And that's why there's things like monkeys. I should say, in the old interiors, there were things like monkeys up on the lights and all kinds of whimsical animals kind of tied into the theme. So that way, there was a feeling of entertainment in the architecture and in the interior space for both kids and adults. They could find something kind of whimsical and entertaining throughout it. So I don't think it needed an elaborate story trademark. It's just a freaking hotel that had like some cool decor.
I know.
I mean, it's a postmodern hotel.
Right.
It's like, yes, it has cool stuff and it's remixed, and it doesn't have to have a stupid story like that. I'm sorry if someone loves the story, I apologize, but like that's just over the top. It's like they were just happy to make buildings with cool things on it.
Yeah, what I had been researching too is that the original design in terms of the decor and everything inside originally led more to that story, or showed the two buildings being more integrated, and that's since changed with.
Well, they really did consider it a like the lake there, and they were considered a set.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the dolphin and the swan facing each other, and that was considered to be companions to each other, the same way that eventually the boardwalk becomes an across the water companion to the yacht and
Right.
beach.
Yep.
Right. So it ultimately was a $375 million project. It was announced on January 29th, 1988. And Todd has pulled a bunch of articles from January of 88 leading up to the ultimate announcement. And we'll talk about that. But the Swan opened in January 1990, the Dolphin in June of 1990. The Dolphin operated by Sheridan and the Swan by Weston, which was owned by a Japanese company, and I don't know how to pronounce it, AOKI, at the time of construction. Both of those companies were bought by Marriott in 2016, and Marriott has been running the property since then. So Marriott ends up there in the end. And the owner and asset manager, even today, remains the Tishman Group, with MetLife owning a piece of it with Tishman. And I'm curious, I could find nothing in writing about the connection between MetLife and Tishman and the deal, and whether that has anything to do with MetLife sponsoring the Wonders of Life Pavilion.
So the answer to that is yes.
All right.
So they were brought in kind of together. So MetLife, being a giant insurance company, had a boatload of money that they could apply to projects in order to, make more money on top of it. So they were looking to invest in other things to help the money grow at MetLife. And as part of their deal with sponsoring the Wonders of Life, they talked him into putting money into this hotel project as well. So yes, that is how all that ties together.
Makes perfect. We call that synergy.
Yes.
Makes perfect sense.
And I'll very briefly say there is a side story here that potentially applies to the failed Africa Pavilion in Epcot, because what I discovered in doing some research about 10 years ago is that Tishman had a humongous collection of African art that he ended up donating to Disney, and I believe it was probably under the idea that that could end up in the pavilion, the Equatorial Africa Pavilion. That ended up not getting built. Disney held onto it for quite some time, would give it out for exhibition, and then I think they finally did donate the bulk of the collection to a museum someplace today. So there is a Tishman-Disney collection of African art that came from Tishman's personal collection that could have influenced and reformed or been part of the Equatorial Africa Pavilion. So there's a huge connection there.
So it really led to the development of the whole area. It's what drove it, because Michael Graves, when he won the design competition, he laid out everything pretty much from International Gateway, the entire design of Crescent Lake and the waterways and the hotel location pads, not just the one that he built on. But because Eisner was, eyes on the prize here, he had this deal with Tishman, but he had also decided we were building our own hotels. So they designed it so that, yes, Tishman would get his convention resorts, but at the same time, Eisner has, I got this pad here, I got this pad here. We're going to start working on these other resorts and these ideas. But when I say Graves designed everything, the color schemes, the furniture inside, everything inside the Swan and Dolphin resorts, light fixtures, the colors and the designs on the trams that we're going to talk about at the end, to the matchbook covers. I mean, things like that. He had his hand in everything, and Eisner became this architecture geek. If you've ever read a book about Steve Jobs, how he was obsessed with fonts and would spend like weeks and weeks obsessing over fonts that they were going to include on their computers, that was Eisner with architecture. And, in the 80s, like he was just, it became his, like this rich man's toy. It was just, he loved it. And he was in the playground here, and he got to engage his whimsy everywhere. So I'll ask the first question, Todd, because you know the answer. Those black boxes on the black areas on the Swan and Dolphin, those are where the monorail was supposed to go, right?
Oh, absolutely. 120 feet up in the air would be fine. No big
Drop you off on the 12th floor.
Yeah, it's convenient to all locations. If you just go down the stairwell off to your left, you'll be fine. So no, they are not. I know people have. It's one of those great rumors that has circulated over the years. No, they were not built that way. They were not supposed to be monorails through there, and nobody would do it that high. So sorry to crush anybody's hearts.
You can actually go, but Well, first, the answer to the question is that was part of Graves' thing. He did the Portland City Hall in 1982. And you can, if you Google that, you can see it's got the same kind of black sections on it and different colored bricks that were offsetting each other. And that's all it is. It was a design choice. It was nothing functional. But if you have any doubt, you can, in the lobby of the Dolphin, if you come down the escalators to right outside where the Blue Zoo restaurant is and the fountain ice cream stand, as you're going out the rotating door that brings you to the walkway between the two resorts, the actual original model for the resort is there, and you can see clearly there's no monorail on it. So there was never planned to be a monorail there.
I'd really love to know where that whole thing started from, because that one I believe was pre-internet too, when people started coming up with that idea.
But like AOL message boards and things that. Yeah. Like, it was, I think it dated from that era. And you know what happens? I mean, they kind of take off and then it gets repeated and repeated and repeated. And then
another rumor I read about was there's temporary rooms that can be removed from behind the black square, like a chest of drawers, perhaps.
That's right. We could just reach in. And let's be honest here. I'm gonna do some Google mapping here in a second. I'm just gonna give you an idea of the size of those. Let's see. We'll do it in feet. It was in centimeters. I think we want to do it in feet. But yeah, that whole area, if that was going to be a hole, it's 80 feet by 80 feet. That's a huge space. You don't need that much space to put a monorail through.
Yeah. So that's not why those are there. It was just a Michael Graves design choice. Those resorts are massive, and they were designed to cater to a different, actually when Disney did this, their contemporary in the 70s, a big part of their business model was these business conventions. That's why the contemporary has the Ballroom of the Americas and the other smaller breakout rooms. And that business never really developed for them in the manner in which they wanted it to. And by the early to mid 80s, it became evident that they needed bigger spaces. So the convention facilities at the Swan and Dolphin, it's difficult to describe how massive they are. Is it 200,000 square feet, right, Todd? Isn't that
250,000?
250,000.
That's massive. Yeah, absolutely massive.
Have a few of your friends over.
Yeah.
Even plenty of room with social distancing. No issue at all.
Not at all. Not at all. Each one can get their own ballroom.
And 2,267 guest rooms. It was the largest hotel from a guest room perspective on Disney property when it was built. And it may still be, I'm not sure.
The construction project, Todd, you read some stuff on difficulties there, right?
Yeah. So it's interesting is that this actually, part of this dates back to 1969. Back then, that they had a relationship actually between the unions and Disney, and they basically, as it says here in this article this is from the Sentinel from 1988 or so, they enjoyed an almost exclusive hold on construction work at Disney. The union labor built almost every facet of Disney World, from the Magic Kingdom Epcot Center to the Contemporary Resort and the support facilities visitors never see. So apparently this has to do with hiring halls. I don't fully understand unions, so I'm not going to dive into the logistics of all this. But apparently during the Swan and Dolphin construction, it really started to rile the unions up. And basically they paid substandard wages for non-union workers in violation of the labor contract. And in fact, this is how bad it got. As a result, the site had been picketed. And in one violent incident, protesters destroyed a car and slashed the tires of another. And then Disney was basically saying, hey, it can't enforce any of the contracts because they're an investor in the hotels. They're not part of the they're just the landlord of the site and not an investor.
Card says moops.
Yes, interesting stuff. So I could not find any article about the resolution, but maybe that's news. They'll tell you the exciting part and not tell you the boring finish to the story. So but at stake were millions of dollars of construction projects thereafter. So just kind of an interesting tidbit that, this kind of spawned some of that and slashed tires too.
So Disney has two other. Oh, wait a second, Todd. Could planes crash into the Swan and Dolphin since they were so big?
That's another question you got for me. So I don't have a full answer for this yet, but I did find some other interesting information. So by rules of FAA regulations, anything over 200 feet needs to have a red light atop. And we all hear that, Joe Rohde built the Everest to 199.99999, and there doesn't have to be a red light, all that stuff. So I started searching through FAA databases, and they have what's called an obstruction database that is updated every 2 months because, cell towers and different things and radio towers are changing. So it has to be updated in probably plain software and different things. Now, what's really interesting about this, I got the latitude and longitude of the Swan, and what did you come up with? It's 270 some feet?
Let's see, 27 stories tall, so 257 feet tall.
Okay, so 257. So by the rule I just read, it should be, it should have red lights atop. Here's what's interesting. It doesn't exist, nor does almost anything else on Walt Disney World property in the FAA obstruction database, which I found really interesting. And there's even things in there under 200 feet. What do you guys think is still in the database? Any guesses that what is in the database but is not there anymore?
So something that would be an obstruction that is no longer there.
Yeah.
Something on Disney property?
Yeah.
Man.
And it is right absolutely down to the latitude and longitude of where it was.
And is that over 200 feet tall?
Well, no, it was actually listed at around, it was listed as around 230 total there's two different heights. There's the above sea level. So the ASL, I think, was 230, which would have been the height from the ground, and then there's the actual. So
I wasn't factoring sea level. That's my bad.
Well, I know your calculations are off.
I mean, Earful Tower wasn't that big, was it?
No, and that wasn't listed on there. Believe it or not, the wand over Spaceship
I was
Earth.
going to say that. Son of a.
It is
nutcracker,
bizarre because it's still in the database, and there's actually an online map of obstructions. The only other obstructions are listed on Disney property I could find were some towers off deep in Fort Wilderness, some of the new towers over where Osprey Ridge or whatever it is, that the old golf club, and then obviously some of the buildings over at on Hotel Plaza Boulevard. So I'm going to do some more digging. I just found it really interesting because, obviously there's a couple of things, the Contemporary obviously isn't 200 feet tall, but we know the castle's 180, Spaceship Earth is 180, Everest is 199.9999, and all that. So, 270, it's over, but, and the lighting pattern has changed on over the years. It used to be lit up.
Yeah,
So.
I'm going to say that's going to be my pet theory right now, is that the original lighting package on that, and I don't know if it was turned off for energy saving purposes or just
Pre-LED days.
Yeah, but the original lighting package, each one of the fountains on the tops of those towers was lit from below very brightly. The dolphin up on top and the swans, they had giant spotlights on them that you could see at night, like super brightly illuminated. And even the pyramid top of the dolphin had huge spotlights on. I mean, so on the sides, it's kind of like this green color without any windows. So there's no, guest windows facing out. It was just bathed in light, like it was daytime. So it could be that they got a special allowance because the lighting was just, I mean, I don't know how
you could miss it. Yeah.
Right. Compared to like one tiny blinking red light, it's like, that's like 1,000 times better than that.
Mr. Bowers, you're on the top floor of the 27th. There's a presidential suite. Also provided with you are, here's your sleeping goggles. You're going to need these.
Well, let me say, I stayed there in November, and my room looked out on the Dolphin, and the room looked out across the walkway to the Swan, and the fountains that are on, because it's not just, there are fountains on top of the resort,
right,
which is fascinating. Which was one of the things. Literally, Tishman looked at Graves' design and said, "You can't put fountains on top of a resort. Like that doesn't work." And obviously, it does. They build it. But my room looked out onto one of the fountains. But I was on the 14th floor, 12th floor, so I don't remember what it was, but. The fountains would simmer down at like midnight. And then go back up at like 8 o'clock in the morning. I guess you didn't get up and go to the bathroom all night or something, just listening to the fountain outside.
I've heard this tinkling all night. I don't know what it is.
Actually, all of the, I don't know what it was back then, but all of those rooms, they have total blackout curtains.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, the other thing too, you guys had to read this. All the rooms they say up in the point of the pyramid aren't. There's nothing there. Those are fake windows.
So I recently stayed there when we went to go to Food and Wine, and I want to say we were on either the 12th or the 14th floor, and I don't think it went any higher than 16.
Yeah.
So I would have to agree with JT. They're either fake or it's all office space.
They just said there was no good use of the space. Now maybe that's the FAA thing. There's no people staying in there, so it doesn't matter if a plane crashes into it. Just who cares?
I think this we're going to have to
discourage that.
This is like the contemporary third floor. We're going to find the elevator to the top. All right, guys. So I did some digging on this, and it's a great. JT, you mentioned that maybe there's no rooms up there. Here's what's interesting: is that their presidential suite is not at the top. Okay, so they say this is the highest room. It's called the Peak Suite. And what's really interesting that the Peak Suite has a balcony, and that balcony is just above that 80 by 80 black area that we talked about. There's actually a balcony up there. So, JT, I think you're onto something that any guest room above that, there's probably 6 or 7 stories where it gets narrower and narrower and narrower, where there probably aren't going to be any rooms up there. So if you have and it's a 2-story suite, by the way, so you're going to go up at least 1 story from there, and that leaves 6, 7, 8 of them further up. So there's a number of if you Google Peak Suite, you can see it's pretty nice up there, and the windows in the Peak Suite are at least 6 in the middle and 2 on each side, which means you need a width of at least 10 windows, which obviously can't be up in the Peak. So I can't imagine them selling this room at $3,000 to $4,000 a night, saying you're in the Peak, and then sending somebody up 7 more stories into a tiny little room for $250, right? It just doesn't. It doesn't make sense.
I'm not going to infer that Michael Eisner saw the plans for the Swan Dolphin, which Disney would not operate. He was obligated to let Tishman build them, and said, let me copy a bunch of this stuff in our own resorts on these other pads. But it sure seems like it when you start looking at it. So they build the Yacht and Beach Club. Hal, do you have the press release for when they announced that? Was that one of the press releases you had?
Yes, I do have the press release for the Yacht and Beach Club.
So I think that's probably a good place to start with it, and I'll draw on my thought process here on Eisner copying some of the Swan and Dolphin.
All right. So here's what it says. The new Disney Yacht and Club Beach Resort, now under construction at the Walt Disney World Resort, will bring the mood of a New England seaside resort to the shores of a 25-acre lake west of World Showcase at Epcot Center. The 2 vacation hotels, designed by noted architect Robert A.M. Stern, are being built on the lake's north shore by Enterprise Building Corporation of St. Petersburg, Florida. Woo! Hometown. The resort will contain 1,214 guest rooms, 52,000 square feet of meeting space, and unequaled amenities for resort vacationing in a group of 1 to 5-story buildings. The 634-room Disney's Yacht Club Resort, the first phase of the project, will open in November 1990. The 580-room Beach Club Resort, as well as the meeting space, will follow in November of 1990. They will both be operated by Walt Disney World Resorts. He's like, sticking the knife in there. Complementing each other, the Stern Design hotels will have 2 distinctive architectural styles. They will each have their own entrance motif, main lobby restaurants, and retail shops, and will be joined by a common public area with a health club, game arcade, childcare, and other amenities. Resort guests will be able to walk or go by bus or tram directly to the new entrance at World Showcase in Epcot Center. Adjacent to the Walt Disney World Swan and Walt Disney World Dolphin hotels, the new Lakeside Complex will prove a striking comparison between the styles of 2 of America's most famous architects, Stern and Michael Graves. Well, how about that? They are pitting them against each other. Who adopted a Disney-inspired neoclassic mood of entertainment architecture for the two high-rise hotels. The Walt Disney World Swan opened in November 89 and Walt Disney World Dolphin in June 1990. Okay. Stern, well known for his traditional residence in public buildings, designed the two hotels in keeping with the turn-of-the-century seaside homes of Newport and his New England shingled-styled residences in the Hamptons. The Disney's Yacht and Beach Club Resort evoke memories of summer days along the eastern seaboard. The design of Disney's Yacht Club Resort echoes the New England seaside summer cottages of the 1880s. Disney's Beach Club Resort suggests the seaside hotel of the 1870s. A bit of Americana, said Joe Wood, director of hotel development for the Disney Development Corporation, who is responsible for the project. And it says the centerpiece of the resort is a 2.5-acre fantasy pool water recreation area with thrilling water slides off a shipwreck and a unique snorkeling experience in a sand-bottomed lagoon filled with bass, crappie, and other fish indigenous to the Florida freshwater environment.
Okay, so there's a lot to unpack there.
There is a lot. Yeah.
Let's start with the comparison between. So Eisner has them building here, and he's like, all right, I got stuck into this deal. I'm gonna stick it to Tishman now. I'm gonna build my own little convention hotel right over here with all the Disney flourishes that I can fit into it and do it my own way. So the convention center they ultimately opened there was 73,000 square feet when they finished building it. So it was actually bigger than what was in the press release initially. So he's targeting slightly smaller conventions, but the way the resort was designed, the yacht club side is more of an adult side, and the beach club side was more the family side in terms of their design and their whimsy. And but these resorts, so the Grand Floridian, which opened in '88, was the first resort built on Eisner's watch. That one they had designed before he got there. The Imagineers kind of put it in front of him, and he had some input in flourishes and all, but the essential layout of it and design was already done. And that has a small convention center on it too. But the Yacht and Beach Club were, along with Caribbean Beach and other things that he opened that year, were like the first Eisner resorts. Like they're the ones that he got to go in there and do it his way. So, as I mentioned at the top of the show, the Yacht Club is Michael Eisner's favorite resort on property. It is also my favorite resort on property. I love staying there. I love the feel of the place. I love the low-key kind of vibe in the resort. So think about it. Swan Dolphin has this ice cream parlor in at the fountain. They put peaches and cream in the Swan Dolphin. The layout of the resort there with, obviously there's a bunch of restaurants at the Swan and Dolphin in the two different resorts, but let's look at the pool. So the Swan builds, all the Disney pools up at that point were really just a box. The Polynesian had the volcano slide, but the pools were, the pools. They weren't these The Swan Dolphin builds theirs. It's got a grotto. It's got, I don't know if you've ever seen the Swan Dolphin pool, but it's enormous. And it stretches between the two resorts. The Stormalong Bay stretches between the two resorts. The Stormalong Bay has things, like bridges you can swim under. The Swan Dolphin has bridges you can swim under. It really does look like there was a lot of stuff in there, and Eisner's like, do this, but do it better. So that's my working theory on a lot of the stuff that was packed into the smaller package at the Swan Dolphin, or rather at the Yacht Beach, that I don't want to say they stole it from the Swan Dolphin, but they just kind of looked at it and said, all right, this is the way this thing is doing. I'm going to do it better this way. I'm going to do it the Disney way over here. We'll add one more postscript here to the Swan and Dolphin. Any guesses as to, so we know that they were $375 million to build it. Any guesses as to what they're worth today?
Oh, more than 10-fold, more than 20-fold, I bet.
Well, you're right on the 10-fold about.
I'm going to say $1.
No, it's
this is the price is right.
I'd say since they turned off that lighting, it's a little lower.
It's about double. So in 2018, Bank of America loaned Tishman and MetLife $627 million with the two properties as collateral. So Not a bad investment for MetLife there. They doubled their money.
That's crazy.
There is one other thing that we should mention, I think, while we're here, and that is why this is called the Crescent Lake area. Because if it wasn't for the swan and the dolphin, there would be no Crescent. Because we wondered, I was like, so what's the Crescent? Like, why? I assumed it was that body of water in front of the Yacht and Beach Club, and I'm like, well, that doesn't look like a crescent. And then I looked at the model, actually, of the swan and dolphin, and I'm like, oh, look, the water right in front of the swan and dolphin is completely crescent shaped. And then when I looked back through all the documentation, it says the 27th Story Dolphin will form part of the Epcot Center skyline. The dolphin and swan surround Crescent Lake, capital C, capital L. So Crescent Lake is not the whole body of water there. It is literally that body of water in front of the swan and the dolphin.
But we've decided now it's everything.
Yeah, I guess.
It's just kind of expanded, you know.
Oh, and I actually have the actual answer of why the dolphin looks like the dolphin.
Oh,
Excellent.
good.
That we can insert back.
Now
in the
Todd's
other
going to
thing.
have a bunch of editing.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yes.
Great.
So
You're getting this in 2 weeks.
So according to an article in the Disney News magazine, Graves selected the dolphin motif because it's been a classic symbol of water since the Renaissance. But rather than make the form serious, he lightened it. Quote, not to the point of cartoon, but certainly where they, the dolphins, are a lot of fun, he explains. Classic, but fun. So, and did you guys know that there were plush made of the swan and the dolphin that you used to be able to get?
That's awesome.
Now I have to put those on my. I was never like a stuffed animal collector, but come on.
They're very rare, but they are out there. I have seen them on eBay, and I know somebody on Twitter actually has acquired one of each one. It's incredible.
That's amazing. So let's get into Stormalong Bay, because that's like the main event, the main attraction. It was revolutionary when they designed this resort in terms of resort pools.
As a kid in that era, that was the one you wanted to sneak into,
Yes.
which now has ruined it for everybody else. But still, you'd go take a bus over there, whatever, and get it. It's that awesome.
So you heard from Hal reading the press release there that it had a lazy river. It still has a lazy river. It had a regular swimming pool area. There's hot tubs up in 2 different sections of it. And then there was a sandy bottomed area. The one area, the sandy bottomed area, was originally supposed to have live fish. And they tried to do the live fish, as we found out. I don't remember how many years back, but our friend David Carver, I think it was listening closely and said, hey, I stayed there opening weekend, and sent us the letter from the general manager saying that the fish were not going to be alive to be offered to you to swim through and enjoy.
But Brian, when was this resort opened?
1990.
David says that he was there September, the last week of September, first week of October, 91. And he got this letter.
Really?
So that's what I'm trying to,
I'm wondering if he's off by a year, because it opened in November of 1990. So.
Yeah, because he was there September, October of 91, he says. So you're like, were they still trying to get the fish working then? Was the pool down? I don't even know.
Yeah, it's really interesting.
But anyways, if he got the letter stating that they were just having, I can read it here if you want.
Yeah, go ahead. Read.
It says, this is from the GM, Antonio Torres. He says, thanks for staying here. This is cool because it's like a typed letter, like a typewriter or whatever. It's a weird font. The centerpiece of our resort is Stormalong Bay, a 3-acre, 750,000-gallon pool. It's really a mini water park. When we planned this resort, we intended to have a snorkeling lagoon where guests could swim among the fish. Although this feature has been advertised for a variety of reasons, we are not able to offer this particular experience. Please be assured that all other features of this special area, including whirlpools, bubbling jets, rising sands, and water slide, are all available. So you wonder, maybe they sent this letter out for a year or two after, because there was literature, there was, promos, and it was still stuck out there.
So we do know that they tried it. Yeah. And I don't remember if we knew from David or if somebody else had told us, but the fish kept getting sucked into the filtration system, and there was there was all kinds of problems that they couldn't keep them alive. So they decided to abandon it. But that was not the only swim with the fish experience that they built. They had one in Typhoon Lagoon, right?
Yep, that was saltwater though, like
Yes.
sharks, and that
You
was
could
the
swim
big
with the
thing there.
sharks.
Swim with the sharks.
Yeah. I never got to do it before they discontinued that. Again, the years run together. 3, 4, 5 years ago now, I think they
It was freezing
ended
cold.
that. Everybody talks about how cold it was.
50-degree water or something. You're just floating across the top.
Yeah, you weren't allowed to stop or anything, right?
No,
You had to kind of keep moving. So that was the but Stormalong Bay remains. I mean, and JT referenced it. The people who used to pull hop in there, because the policy for a while was, if you were staying at any Disney resort, you could visit the pool and use the facilities at any other Disney resort. That was the thing of the 80s and 90s as they began to build more of these resorts, right?
Yeah, that, and then I recall at some point, I could be wrong, but I remember, you may use other pools except Stormalong Bay.
Right. And now, basically, you're not supposed to go to any other pool or anything.
No, you can't go anywhere.
Unless they're under construction. I know when the Polynesian pool was under construction, they were directing people, I think, to the Grand Floridian.
Yeah.
When they redid that. And so anyway, the Stormalong Bay, I'm not saying it was copied from the Swan and Dolphin, but it sure seems like that they were borrowing a lot of the ideas from what was kind of laid out in the Swan and Dolphin. So a little bit more on the design of Yacht and Beach and how it's different from the other resorts that Disney had built. The other resorts all basically have a concourse and one central area where the dining and the shopping is, and the Contemporary and the Polynesian. And even the Grand Floridian, for the most part, everything's kind of right there by the centralized building. The Yacht and Beach is a little different. Each side has its own kind of layout. The gift shops were tucked off by themselves. The quick service in the yacht club was there was a window at the captain's galley where you could get quick service. There's a high-end restaurant in both resorts when it opened, the Yachtsman Steakhouse, which is still open in the yacht club, and Ariel's, named after the mermaid, in the beach club. Ariel's closed post 9/11, I think it was, and never reopened. It is used for private functions. At one point, a couple years ago, when they were renovating the captain's galley in the yacht club, they opened Ariel's for breakfast and maybe lunch too. I know I had breakfast there when it was open, but Ariel's is very nice. You can actually see it right when you walk into the beach club from the concourse, the walkway. In the center, there's shared facilities, which is the arcade, the Beaches and Cream ice cream shop, which is very popular for the No Way Jose and the kitchen sink sundae. And it's a little easier to get a table these days because you can actually use the app to do it. But for the longest time, it was, do you want to go get some ice cream? Let's go get our name on the list so we can wait for an hour to get a table. I mean, it's always impossible to get in there. There's a spa, like a health spa in between the two of them for, treatments and massages and things like that. And the gym is there. That's all shared by both resorts. So it's an interesting design. Both resorts also have a quiet pool in addition to Stormalong Bay. We'll come back to Yacht Club's quiet pool at the end when we talk about International Gateway. But they just a very interesting layout, how a lot of the facilities and services and shops and things are kind of tucked away in this one in different spots rather than all being in a central location. So that was a neat design choice that they made. They're both exquisitely themed. The yacht club, dark woods everywhere. In the beach club, there's a lot of gingerbread finishes, kind of a very Cape May, New England feel. Really well done. So as I mentioned, it is Eisner's favorite resort, the yacht club. He still stays there when he goes today with his grandkids. He does tweet when he's there. And the last 2 times he has stayed at the yacht club. So it is his bona fide favorite.
I do have in my burn bombs here that at the yacht club, each room has a color TV set, ceiling fan, mini bar, and a table with a checkerboard top, and they even put in their chess and checker sets in the rooms.
Oh, well, those tables aren't there anymore, but
Yeah.
my one gripe is, and this is a trend in the hotel industry, but on the last refurb, they pulled the carpets out of the room to put down those laminate floors, and I prefer a carpeted floor. So, but I did stay there after they switched. I think we stayed there for Epcot 35 weekend. If
You
I
did.
remember
That's
correctly.
yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, and it was, it's still, like I said, it's still my favorite.
Is there still a salon there?
There is not.
It says there was a salon called Periwig.
In the yacht or in the beach?
It says it is located in a central area.
Oh, yeah, and between the two I don't think so.
For
I
men
don't,
and women.
They
Yeah,
seem
I
to
don't
have
think-
closed an awful lot of the haircutting places.
Yeah, I just don't think that there's I don't think there's a lot of people getting their hair done on vacation anymore. I mean, they do still have it in the Grand Floridian, I think, but I don't think they have it I'm pretty sure they don't have it there anymore. But I also wanted to mention the addition of the Vacation Club, which they did in 2002, I think it was. Summer of 2002, they added the Beach Club Villas, which is actually behind the Beach Club property. And they expanded the convention center at the Yacht Club last year, actually, by an additional 28,000 feet. So that's a little, right about 100,000 square feet now. So it's a pretty groovy place. And if I hit the lottery, if I win that $750 million Mega Millions, that's where I'll stay when I go. No Golden Oak House for me. I'm just going to stay at the Yacht Club. The boardwalk existed across the water, but there was no hotel or resort or boardwalk shops across the way. It was just the construction pad and a construction wall eventually. But in front of the Yacht and Beach Club, there is a beach. And in front of the Yacht Club, there is a dock. They continued to rent watercraft until Disney discontinued that practice at all of the resorts except for the Seven Seas Lagoon Magic Kingdom resorts. They used to be able to rent them, as you know, down off of Sassagoula River and downtown Disney. But that was a feature there, and they had a variety of watercraft when they opened back in the 90s. I mean, there was sailboats and Chris Crafts and all kinds of other things that were out there. It was a whole host of things that you could rent either with a driver or and then of course they had the water sprites that everybody had.
What's a float boat? FLOTE.
I'm not a man of the sea.
I don't know. And there's also something they list as a Toobie, TOOBIE.
Well, there you go. I mean, those are some Google challenges for you at some point.
And they also say water sprites. That's pedal boats, sailboats, Tubies, float boats, and water sprites.
Here you go. A Harris float boat is one of those. Those like what
pontoon?
we rented. It's
like
one of those pontoon boats. There
it's
you
pontoon. Go. Okay. The Swan actually still has the Swan pedal boats that you.
Oh
can
yeah,
rent.
that's right. Yes,
and that's included with your like $1 resort fee there. But they're like you can get them between like 10 and 3 or like noon and 5 or something, and they just have the little lagoon out there that you can pedal them in, but you can still go out and get a Swan pedal boat and take your darling Clementine out there and pedal around with a parasol and
fish for
paddle
dolphins.
boats are fun for about 10 minutes. Then you're like, all right, what am I doing out here?
Yeah. SeaWorld has them, and they are not fun. It's work. It's you're out there pedaling a boat. So that's but then they had the beach area. They still have the beach area in front of the beach club, with chairs set up, and you. All right. Well, here's a question.
That's yeah.
Could you swim in Crescent Lake? When
I
it
don't
first
know.
opened?
I was just thinking that. Was it a that?
I doubt it, but I'm asking. I mean, how would be the?
I do not recall seeing people swimming there ever. It seemed like the swimming was really in the pool. There were people that were sitting out, but I don't recall people ever swimming over there when it was.
Yeah,
even in the earliest days.
Yeah, and I've seen enough pictures and videos from back then. There's no like buoys out there or areas that are kind of cordoned off for swimming. So yeah, I don't think anybody ever swam there. So
yeah, and that wasn't like that wasn't one of those situations where they filled it with fresh water from springs. That was literally probably whatever was left over, and then it's connected to the Epcot Lake.
So that beach had, beach chairs, and they had little double chairs. There's a couple of swings on the beach, and they do campfires down there. And nowadays there's movies on the beach. There were always beach activities and stuff. It was really, it was a nice development. But you were looking across at an empty boardwalk for 5 years until Disney eventually announced that we're building the Boardwalk Resort. Do we have a press release for that, Hal?
I do, and I'll talk about that the Boardwalk Resort wasn't really a resort when it was first announced. It was really an entertainment complex. So I'm gonna put together a couple of press releases and some other information to try to describe what this is like. So in the one press release I have, this was announced as part of the Disney Decade. Michael Eisner's huge, like, hey, look at all these great things that we're going to do in the Orlando parks. It says, scheduled to open in early 1994, Disney's Boardwalk is designed in the tradition of the great amusement areas of the Atlantic City and Coney Island. The 30-acre project is now under construction just west of Epcot Center between Walt Disney World Swan and the International Gateway to World Showcase. The following are in the concept stage to be included in Disney's Boardwalk. All right, here we go. 1. Under the Sea, a 600-seat indoor aquatic dinner show extravaganza featuring The Little Mermaid and Sebastian. Now, if you recall, Disney under Eisner would basically go to war with any other attraction that it felt was cutting in on people's time at Disney. So they always say, like one of the reasons The Living Seas was built was kind of a spoiler against SeaWorld. And ultimately, one of the reasons that Animal Kingdom was built was because it was a spoiler to Busch Gardens. This would have been the spoiler of all spoilers to Weeki Wachee Springs, because this show was in a giant aquatic amphitheater. There was, a huge glass panel in front of where everyone sat, and the mermaids were underwater in front of you with the tubes, and this whole show was going to be done in a very Weeki Wachee Springs style, which probably would have decimated anything that was left of Weeki Wachee Springs at that time. So that was one show. Second one was called Family Reunion, which was a 300-seat. These theaters are huge. I mean, 300 people eating dinner. A 300-seat environmental theater dinner show that involves guests as part of the show when the cast sits with them. So, yeah. So this was be sort of like an improv comedy.
It's like an Adventurers Club type thing, but in a dinner setting, right?
And at the time, I think wasn't that when they were pushing like the whole family reunion at Disney concept? Like, I know there was a whole marketing thing around that. I can't remember.
There was. I remember that being more the late 90s, but
because there was a whole MetLife tie-in with that too, I think.
Well, there might have been. I mean, hey, I was. You were there every day back then. You should remember.
Yeah. So vaguely,
you got a family.
And then the third show was called Disney Magic. This was included in a possible expansion phase, and then incorporated magic with the Disney characters in a dinner show format. So they're going to basically do like a magic show, but in dinner theater. But that's not all. Also included as part of this boardwalk would be 23 lively retail shops and restaurants that line the quarter-mile-long boardwalk, including a premier 13,000 square foot Disney department store. So this would have been an absolutely gigantic department store. They go on to say that vendors along the water will add to the gala ambience with everything from saltwater taffy to removable tattoos. Jugglers, mimes, and other street performers will entertain. And also there was a restaurant called Walt's Attic, which would be decorated with Disney memorabilia, a seafood house, which ultimately did show up there, and other themed restaurants with outdoor waterfront dining. 2 nightclubs are planned, including a dueling piano show with audience participation. And they also planned at some point of having a carousel on one side of the stretch of the boardwalk, and then a Ferris wheel, probably on a pier out over the water on the other side. So this was basically Pleasure Island 2. And I think the thought was Pleasure Island was super popular. At least I thought it was. They thought it was making a lot of money. Again, if there was conventions going on in this area, this would be a place that they could dump into directly without having to have transportation over to Pleasure Island. So this would have been like a whole separate Pleasure Island. And as part of that, was an all-suite hotel of 530 units, with a turn-of-the-century character compatible with the adjoining Boardwalk Entertainment Complex. So think of this as Pleasure Island with a hotel attached to it. But for a wide variety of reasons, which probably includes, Euro Disney, probably includes finding out Pleasure Island was not really making money the way that they thought it was. They stepped back from this. And also, what was the other event that happened that you mentioned, Brian, when you were talking to, you talked to somebody that said he had a reason of why they thought there was a pause.
Well, there was the pause. We'll actually have an interview that we're going to play in a bit with one of the tram drivers. But you had the Gulf War in '91,
there we go,
and then you had the recession in '92, and it just and then Euro Disney, all of which all of a sudden made Disney a little risk adverse in terms of, well, maybe we shouldn't think so big at the moment,
Yeah. So that stuff kind of went on pause, and it got turned into something that they knew that they could sell, which was a hotel. And I cannot lay my hands on the renderings anymore, but I remember seeing renderings of the complex early on, and it just struck me so funny how this the idea for Boardwalk suddenly got transformed into the idea for a Boardwalk area at Disney's America, which then got transformed into a Boardwalk area at Disney's California Adventure. So what we have at Disney's California Adventure, which has now been redone to Pixar Pier, is like 2 steps removed from what could have been at Boardwalk originally.
Right. And the appeal to Eisner, because he's the one that kind of got fixated on this amusement park idea, partially his growing up and remembering Coney Island and that kind of stuff. But also, it was very attractive because you could just buy off-the-shelf rides and do a heavy Disney overlay on them, and there was no R&D money or anything else to spend, as opposed to Test Track, which took them 3 years to get it running. It's just, and you're seeing with Rise of the Resistance now, they've, it's a new ride systems are always difficult to kind of iron out the kinks, and it can take years. And this was a case where they could, just start, and they have done that. They did it with Bugs Land, and they did it with the Camp Minnie Mickey in Animal Kingdom, and there's just putting the Triceratops spin in Animal Kingdom, and the Aladdin's Magic Carpets in Adventureland and the Magic. Those kind of things are, they get a lot of critique from fans, but a 5-year-old, they love getting on Aladdin's Magic Carpet and flying around Adventureland. Like it's a fun ride for them.
Yep, and it certainly would have been neat to have something like that, rides and just even an old-fashioned carousel. I mean, who doesn't want to ride a carousel?
Yeah,
it'd be lovely.
And so one of the popular explanations is that, and we've heard this from some internal Disney people too, that as they were kind of fleshing this out, the naysayers were like, well, why are we charging at that time $60 a ticket or $65 a ticket for someone to go into Epcot, 300 feet away, and why are they going to come here and be riding roller coasters and Ferris wheels for $2 or $3? Well, then they're not going to buy a ticket to go into Epcot. Now we know that thinking there's a lot of fallacy in that kind of thinking, that the type of guest who might just buy a Ferris wheel ticket, who's a convention guest at the Swan or Dolphin and is just out for the evening with his family, isn't going to drop $200 or $300 on tickets to take his family into Epcot. But at the time, you have to consider all of those things, and I think it just didn't make a whole lot of sense for them to do it.
Yeah, undoubtedly. So what we got instead was kind of a convention hotel and some DVC and
A little bit of everything.
Yeah.
It was it the second DVC or third? I forget where it falls in that.
Well, 96. The first one opened in 90, right?
Yeah.
The
Key West now,
was
yeah.
90.
Disney Vacation Club originally. So yeah, I did some digging on this in terms of the history and going back to they wanted to really bring Atlantic City. So maybe Brian, we should kind of talk a little bit about the Jersey Shore and Atlantic City here, as that's where the Imagineers got a lot of their ideas for it. Back in the late 1800s, there was a problem in Atlantic City with the resorts and hotels and stuff, and that problem was sand. Right, so how do you prevent people from getting on and off the railroad and getting into the hotels? They want to go see the beach. They're wearing their stripy bathing suits, right, from the 1800s,
or not.
Yeah.
I mean, if you look at the pictures of people strolling the boardwalks from the late 1800s through the 1930s, I mean, they're in suits and ties.
Yeah, exactly.
The women are in these
big gowns,
ankle-length dresses and gowns and giant hats and parasols and,
So they came up with the idea in Atlantic City, and they spent about $5,000 to put together a boardwalk, and that was some of the tax money of the town. So what they did is they designed some concrete piers, steel piers, and put it with the boards across in a herringbone pattern, and there was a distance between those boards, and the idea that the sand would then fall off. So this gave the people at the resorts an ability to stroll, have some sea air in them, get a nice view of the ocean. And when they came back in, if they were on the beach, the sand would magically fall off between, and if they weren't, well, they were just walking on the boardwalk. So that boardwalk is now few miles long. It's 60 to 80 feet wide in spots, and the concept of the boardwalk we're all familiar with. I mean, it's on the West Coast and the East Coast, but Brian, you and I growing up in the the tri-state area and going to the Jersey Shore often, I mean, it's a staple, right, of almost every major town.
Yeah, the most of the shore towns, a lot of them anyway, have boardwalks, except Sea Isle has an asphalt walk that they call the promenade. But most of them have a boardwalk, and some of them are not very commercialized. They're just areas to walk along the water and above the beach. And some of them, like Ocean City, Atlantic City, Point Pleasant, Asbury Park, they're very commercially developed. And there's just tons and tons of shops. So I grew up, I was in Ocean City, New Jersey when I was 8 weeks old, and we spent every summer, we spent a portion of our time. My grandmother stayed there all summer, so we always went down to visit her, and we eventually rented places for weeks in the summer. And I grew up going to the boardwalk, and there were 3 amusement piers and arcades that I spent
tickets and tokens, right?
quarters in, playing Donkey Kong and Pac-Man and Paperboy and and the t-shirt shops and cotton candy and fresh lemonade.
Oh, the sausages and the slices of pizza,
slices of
you
pizza,
could get some seafood, the wheels.
So yeah, and then there were there's all kinds of nautical shops and other. So when Disney said they were going to build a boardwalk, now the Ocean City boardwalk.
I want to add one other thing here too.
Yeah,
the word boardwalk. Remember that this is where it came from. This is why Monopoly has boardwalk on it. This is the Atlantic City, right? Boardwalk, which turned out to be the biggest and most important, so to speak, thoroughfare within Atlantic City, even though it wasn't a street. So that's where boardwalk being the highest valued property. If you own boardwalk, you had all the resorts on it. So
that's it. In Ocean City, it's 8 blocks of it is commercial.
Okay.
It starts at 6th Street and goes up to 14th.
I grew up in Point Pleasant. It's quite long, but there was the north part wasn't commercialized. Only that center portion, and then it goes down.
So Ocean City goes to 23rd
Yep.
Street, but the shops and everything stop at 14th.
Gotcha.
And it goes down below 1st Street, but the last amusement pier is at 6th. And Wildwood's the same way. Wildwood's boardwalk is the same way. It stretches out on both sides beyond the stores and stuff. But I expected, having been to Atlantic City, Wildwood, Ocean City, I expected when I came to Disney, when they built the boardwalk, for it to be obviously not 8 blocks long, but I expected it to be 2 or 3 blocks of what I was used to. And I just remember arriving there the first time I saw it, which was in 1998. And I'm like, okay, well, it's a Disney gift shop and a Disney candy store and a Disney bakery, and the ESPN club was there, and a brew pub, and a couple of restaurants.
Where's the lemonade? Where's the pizza?
Well, yeah, I mean, there were a couple of stands that they did have funnel cake. They still have funnel cake. But, so does Epcot, and so does the Magic.
They've got games. They've got basketball.
There is a couple of Midway games there. But I don't know. Like there was nothing. How would I say? There's nothing unique about it. Like it was just seemed like it was all off the shelf merchandise stands and restaurants, and there was no real hook for me. So I just remember kind of that was my first impression of it.
I would say you're starting to get into an era when that was built where you sort of see every Disney resort becomes
homogenized.
Yeah, it's very, very much so. It's just, there's, it's the same elements, just slightly, it's like Taco Bell. It's the same ingredients, just arranged in a different order, and it's called something different.
Yes.
I love Taco Bell.
And you can love it, and you can love the Disney resorts too. It's the same thing, yeah.
Now, in contrast, I went when I was 13, and I thought it was awesome. I never went to the boardwalk before, and I didn't expect it to be, like what you guys are saying. But at the same time, you came from, we'd see Contemporary, we'd see Poly, we'd see Grand Floridian. This just, you're like, wait, where's the lobby? I'm outside, but this is kind of the lobby. And then, it's like, oh, it's like an entertainment complex that's like, oh, but look, I could stay right there and poke my head out, and there's like a stilt man walking by and giving me a high five on my balcony. It just seemed like really cool at the time as a kid.
And I'll tell you that place is gorgeous at night with the lighting and that is when it really shines. Not to like trying to be clever or anything, but it is really pretty there at nighttime.
I mean, I love walking it, and obviously Crescent Lake's my favorite place to stay. So. And I stayed at the Dolphin last time, so I walked by it like 10 times when I stayed there. Had dinner there one night and from the bakery, but it's I don't mind it now, but I just remember being very disappointed about it when I first saw it. And I think because when I remember Rob and I first talked about it when he told me, hey, Disney's going to build a boardwalk. I'm like, oh, brilliant. And again, stolen idea, boardwalk and baseball. Disney was trying to, another competitor they were trying to put out of business. So, their original idea is, hey, we'll build a boardwalk.
Yeah. One of the things that I find especially fascinating about it, now I know this isn't so much in the vacation club section, but this was the first time that I really saw them do, and this was an A.M. Stern, this is a Robert A.M. Stern project again. It's the first time that they really took the Disney methodology of making like a giant building and just putting facades on it. Because that whole complex, it's not really a series of small buildings or, a tower here. It's really a couple of really humongous buildings, and they've just kind of put, these lovely little facades on it and given them some dimension. But it's built like Main Street, in that way, which is very different from like Yacht and Beach, I think.
So I do want to talk about the things I like about the resort. the drive up. So I both like and hate it. I hate that parking there is like, oh, hey, you have to park 7 miles away in our parking lot, and then you can hire a Sherpa to guide you to the lobby because it's just, it really is a resort that is designed solely for valet parking, which was fine when they didn't charge for valet parking, but now that it's like $72 and a stock certificate to park, it's a different arrangement. But I love the court of flags type thing as you pull in under the porte cochere. I love the lobby there. The lobby is filled with there's a roller coaster model in there of what was the old Coney Island one, I think.
We're going to talk about that in a second in a little more detail. Yeah.
Lucy the elephant. There's a model of Lucy the elephant, which is the Margate elephant that I love to take people who come visit here. When I take them to the shore, I always make sure we stop in Margate to see Lucy, who is actually what was originally a hotel or a home built in the shape of an elephant. It's still there. You can go up into it and pay your ticket. 1881
by James Lafferty, and he wanted to promote real estate and attract tourism. He actually built a number of other ones and got a patent that lasted 17 years, and he built some over at Coney Island too, some other animals. So
I have a little Lucy the elephant in my curio cabinet over there that I bought down there as a souvenir.
The roller coaster, by the way, is that is a model of the something at Luna Park in Coney Island. And it was called the Flip Flap Railway. It was one of the first roller coasters. It didn't last very long. Does anybody know why? Well, it is.
Burned down.
Well, if we go back to our physics classes, you don't make loops in a full circle because of the G's. So people were coming off with neck and back problems and all sorts of stuff. Not until they invented the teardrop loop did they realize that you couldn't do that. So, yeah, the Flip Flap Railway was a flop. That's the flip flap. The Flip Flap flop. So
that whole lobby though is filled with I think there's a carousel model in there. There's a hobby carousel horses. There's a couple of carousel horses in there, and the whole walkway with the mutoscopes. So off to the side.
The two things about the carousel that's interesting, that the little one, the smaller carousel that's above on the it's kind of on a round couch, if you will. That was actually turned out to be it was a demonstration model made by MC Illiams in the 1920s. So that was something that if he wanted to, instead of, you can't carry a carousel around with you, so he made a model and would bring it around to potential places where he could buy this. It was in his family for a number of years. Disney purchased it in 1995, restored it, and what's the real detail that they put in there is that it rotates at the correct scale speed to the carousel in Disneyland, which is kind of a strange little.
Does it still rotate?
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. It might need another Imagineering workover. The other thing in there too is I love this name, the Hippocampus Electroleer Chandelier. So it's basically features different animals that might be found in one of Illian's his carousels. And a hippocampus, it's a seahorse with 2 forefeet and a body and the tail of a dolphin or fish. So it's like, wow, the dolphin migrated over across to the boardwalk. So
that's something else.
Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding.
And an electroleer is this dates back to the gas and electric times. It was a chandelier that was designed for electricity rather than gas or candle. So anyway, it's got hand cut crystal, weighs a lot of pounds, and it's got gold leaf on it. So, but this all dates, if you look around the resort, there's all sorts of other things that hint to the Coney Islands, Coney Island of the day. And there's another really interesting story. And this one I found really kind of neat how it, people will say, oh my God, Walt copied this. Well, there are 2 gentlemen, last names Thompson and Dundee. And at Luna Park in Coney Island, they created 2 attractions. One of them was Trip to the Moon, and one of them was 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, where using different types of the Trip to the Moon was great. They would actually get in a bucket and they would pull you up, and then these different things would happen, and then you would get down and you would meet the people of the moon, and they would hand you cheese on the way out because the moon was made of cheese. And then using a circular screen, they did 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. So it's kind of interesting that all did obviously predate Walt. And so a couple of the some people say that the Luna Park nod is a nod to Walt. And all. I don't buy the connection. Luna Park was part of Coney Island. So calling that area over there where the coaster is Luna Park is very, very fitting. So, but I don't know. I love an attraction where you get cheese at the end.
So another thing that I loved still love about the resort, it's still there, is off the lobby. If you go down that hallway where the mutoscopes are, which were pulled from the Main Street Arcade, right? I think they were all from the Main Street Arcade originally. You get to that little bar that's at the bathroom's on the right, but then the little bar on at the top of the steps that's tucked in there. It's the one convenience of the resort is that little bar that's just for the resort. Because one of my knocks against it is that if you want anything else to eat or drink, you have to go outside. That the bakery is basically the quick service for the resort. So if you're heading out, and I should say I've not been on the DVC side, so I don't know if they have one of those DVC stores like most of the other DVC resorts have, where you can get like microwave meals and all. But I think all those things are in the gift shop,
the screen door, or whatever they call it down there.
Which so one of my knocks is if they were going to build it like that for the convenience of the people staying in the resort, so you don't have to go outside. To access those things, is that there should have a double entrance, that you have an entrance from the interior corridor at the ground level, and then one from the boardwalk, so that you keep the boardwalk look, but so I think that's, and obviously there's a lot of reasons they couldn't do that where the restaurants are. There's a kitchen back there, but that's one of my knocks against the place. The other is this, because of the real estate that they wedged it onto. It's both on Crescent Lake or the waterway across from the Yacht and Beach, but it's also along the tributary that leads to MGM. So it's developed in kind of an L shape. It's sprawling, and it's sprawling to the point where if you're in one of the buildings along the waterway to MGM, I don't know how long it takes you to walk to the lobby, but it's a hike. In addition to not being convenient to parking, because the parking is wedged out there by, all the way out in the hinterland. So there's a lot of inconveniences at the resort, which, listen, people who take Magical Express and don't have a car and, end up in the center building, they don't have any of those gripes. But I think that, there's enough inconveniences there that among deluxe resorts, it's one of the ones I would pick last.
One of my gripes always is they market it as like this happening place to be, a boardwalk. There's games, there's restaurants, there's shopping, there's everything, almost like a mini Disney Springs or a mini Pleasure Island. But yet, if you're staying somewhere else, you can't really easily get there. Like, it's not like a stop. Like, do you want to go to Disney Springs? Do you want to go to the boardwalk? It's like, trying to get from Contemporary to, Port Orleans Riverside. It's just, that's nearly impossible to do via internal transportation.
I think it's also one of the most difficult resorts to be allowed to park at.
Yeah, by far.
You're just trying to go, like, I just want to go there and eat something.
Well, you know what? They because the people there, you get to two parks, right? You can walk with by the walk. You park there, you walk through, and I can be at studio.
I've never done that, Todd. I don't know what you're talking about.
I never did it either. I'm just saying. When the kids were young,
I got breakfast before we did that.
We did get breakfast. We did get breakfast.
Ate breakfast and walked to Epcot.
Now we walked to the studios. We walked to this.
Okay.
So.
But yeah, it's tough to get to. That's the thing. It's just, you want to go there, you want to go see it at night, but it's like you got to lie 4 different ways to get in there just to, go get a hot dog and watch the fireworks or something.
Yeah. We shouldn't move on from Boardwalk without talking about the scary clown in the pool.
Oh yeah,
the Keister Coaster,
which is gone now.
The clown has been retired. We are
thank
told
goodness.
In the most recent refurb. But JT, what's the name of that slide?
Well, okay, so we've all seen recently, and this is going away from our retro times, the They're rebranding it. It's Mickey. It's the new Mickey. They called it the Keister Coaster, and they spelled it wrong, and then they immediately put it the right spelling. I was like, oh, cool, a new fun name. Whatever, great. I'm probably not going to go on it anytime soon, but great. I'm glad you did it. The clown's gone. No more Spaghetti O'Hare, and everybody's happy. So I have this is from 1996, early 96, my American Express Disney White Glove Treatment Guidebook. And it says Boardwalk opens June 30th of 96. So this book came out before it opened. They talk about the restaurants. I do like in here that it says Sports Club. It doesn't say ESPN yet. It says Sports Club. So I don't know if the acquisition or the merger was finalized yet, or they even knew it was going to happen, but there was going to be a generic sports club. And then from there, they also called the pool the Keister Coaster in here back then, which I'm blown away by. I didn't know it was even a thing. It says large amusement park pool featuring Keister Coaster, water slide, and 2 quiet pools restricted to Boardwalk House guests only. So I don't know, maybe we're just not in the know, but they were calling it the Keister Coaster back before it even opened.
There we go.
There you go. Because you ride down on your Keister.
And it was off by one day. The resort actually opened July 1, 1996. So
really?
They
didn't make the deadline.
No, but you could stay there for July 4th week. And I will say, as we talk about it, these are matters of personal preference. We know there's a lot of you who it's your home resort, your home DVC resort. You love
Enjoy
it.
I love staying there. I really like the DVC wing. It was very nice. We had a cool view. It was very comfortable. It's a great
I
place.
think it really depends on what you are doing down there. If I'm going down there with just my wife and we're going to go to dinner and walk over to Epcot, probably it wouldn't matter to me. But to your point, Brian, if it's a family staying and there's a lot of work and you're up and down between your rooms and filling up your mugs and things like that, then it can get not that you go to Disney and you don't
question walk. Where do you fill your mug at Boardwalk if you're staying
at the bakery?
You got to go down there.
Yeah.
Oh.
If you're in one of the wings, you got to go a long way.
Imagine you're staying in the back. Yeah, it's a hike.
Yeah.
I had a friend who was there a couple years ago. I was there at the same time as her, and she was there with her family. And we met up one night for the at the time it was this pizza's terrible. The pizza window at the Boardwalk had some legendarily bad pizza, at least in the eyes of people where good pizza is sold. And it was one of those nights where I ended up sitting out there for like 2 hours and I'm eating the pizza like, this is good. You just get so hungry. It's like, I'll eat anything. So I'll take this pizza. But she was stuck in the wings and she's like, man, I'm not happy about this. Like, it's just nothing is convenient. I'm like, man, that's not my first choice of where to stay, but I know some of you love it and you should. It's a beautiful resort, but
so little thing that's tucked away so I was aware that there is a space that you could rent up in the top somewhere called the attic.
Yes.
Which is very cool. But what I found out is that it actually used to be a DVC club members area called the Disney Vacation Club Members Attic. And it was a place that they say was like a grandmother's cottage attic with generations of stored furniture for reading, shore watching, and fireworks gazing. So that used to be an exclusive DVC club, and now it is not. Now it is a space that you could rent out. And I've seen pictures of it. It looks very cool. I had no idea it was there.
If you find the Disney Weddings page, there's a website entirely for weddings, and it shows you some of those different small venues, and the attic is in there. You can see a picture of it. So we can't leave the Boardwalk, or as we leave the Boardwalk, without talking about what we think is a victim of the Boardwalk's success and presence, and that is the death of the tram service that used to run from International Gateway to the Swan Dolphin and Yacht and Beach Club. And we obviously can't talk about the tram without talking about the International Gateway, which is our last piece here on Crescent Lake. When Epcot was built, the area that is now the International Gateway was just a green lawn, right? It was just a lawn area. However, the waterway, the tributary there that leads from what is now the bridge from the UK over to France, back to where International Gateway is, where the friendships come and go. That waterway was there when they built Epcot. And as I said, Tishman was doing the building. The deal to build hotels eventually was there. They did design it with the thought of something potentially being developed back here in this area someday. So there was a little dogleg waterway there alongside what is now International Gateway, but there was nothing there. There was actually a flat walkway around World Showcase, no bridge, no raised area. Nothing could sail underneath what crossed the road there, between the UK and France. It was a whole different arrangement. And we'll put a picture on the website with the article for this episode that shows you the before and after, what was originally there. And then in 1989-90, when they built the International Gateway, what ultimately ended up there. In the early years of Epcot, there were tents there at one point because they had the Renaissance Food Fair. Do you have any idea if they used anything else there, Hal?
I don't recall anything else other than that Renaissance Food Fair being there, because I think that area at one point was kind of earmarked for potential expansion for the UK pavilion. So it just kind of sat.
So the International Gateway opened January 12th, 1990, one day before the Swan, which was the first Crescent Lake resort, opened. The design of it, they wanted it to match France because it was across the bridge from there, and the area was originally themed. That little waterway was themed to the River Seine in Paris. So the Imagineers combined elements from Paris's beautiful age and a European port of entry customs house. Hence why the shop there at International Gateway is named World Traveler. And if you ever see the artwork, the original artwork out there used to be like travel posters for European cities. I think it's Disney-fied stuff now, like it's got characters in it now. But I'll have to confess I haven't looked that closely on my way in and out of the park. So at International Gateway, it was a second gate at the back of World Showcase, or the side of World Showcase, between the UK and France. And it was intended to give the people who were staying on Crescent Lake an opportunity to get into the park. It was an added convenience. Again, kind of mimicking the Magic Kingdom's convenience for those resorts, being able to hop on the monorail from your resort, get right in. So you had the Friendships, which patrolled originally World Showcase and had 3 stops in World Showcase that they would make. They repositioned some of those out into the lagoon there and started boat service from Yacht and Beach and Swan and Dolphin. In addition to that, when they opened, they had a tram. So right outside the gates of International Gateway, the turnstiles, there is a ticket booth there. There's a gift shop, there's lockers, and there's bathrooms. There was a loop turnaround for a tram. It was a standard parking lot tram that was done up in colors for the Swan and Dolphin, the coral and aqua there. And the tram would run from the International Gateway to Swan Dolphin to Yacht Beach and back. We actually, when we put word out about this episode, we met up with one of the original tram drivers from the original International Gateway tram. So we were really excited because people have a lot of questions about them. So we did a little short interview with our friend Scott Dieter earlier tonight, and we want to share some of his stories with you now.
Hey, Scott, how are you?
Hey, how's it going?
Yeah, thank you so much for agreeing to do this. This is great.
Oh, yeah, no problem. So I worked there for 8 years, always in World Showcase. Starting in 1989, I was on the Walt Disney World College program, and I drove the double-decker omnibuses around World Showcase. I made 4 stops around the lagoon, and did that for a semester, and then went back to school and came back the following summer. It was the summer of 1990, and drove buses again and got trained to drive the Friendships within World Showcase Lagoon. And I believe it was right around that time, but with the beginning of the summer of 1990 was when that International Gateway entrance, beginnings of the Epcot resort area opened. the same department that I was working in was tasked with operations of the friendships over there and also the trams, as we talked about. And I was chosen to move over to International Gateway and be trained there, especially since I already drove the friendships. Back then it was a two-part area. There were the tram drivers and the friendship drivers, but everybody did both. You got the training on both things. And at that time the friendships operated from between the at the time the Disney MGM Studios and the Yacht Beach Club and the Swan and Dolphin. There was no boardwalk resort at that time, of course. And then the trams operated from between Epcot and the Swan and Dolphin, picked up and dropped off right in the concourse, approximately where the boat dock is now, and that walkway that's between the Swan and Dolphin Resort.
That was the loop, like around where the fountains are.
Yep. Yeah. So So the way that we came up from where the Skyliner station outside of International Gateway is now, that was the tram loop, and so we would come in that and park there, and that's where the loading queues were, and the guests would load up, and so we'd go up the hill and turn left at the top of the hill there, going away from Epcot, and then along that kind of walkway, and then the wooden boardwalk was in place, but that was it. It was just a construction wall from the same place where it still is. We're at the beginning of that boardwalk. And so you were supposed to go kind of slowly across that because those boards have a tendency to pop out if you kind of went full bore across the wood. So you're supposed to kind of take it easy, but it was pretty boring. So not everybody, I think, did a very good job slowing down like you're supposed to, because there certainly wasn't anybody out there keeping an eye on you. But so then you would go continue around that kind of semicircle, and then it kind of makes a left there to like the Swan and Dolphin complex area, and you would go down that hill and then make the right turn on the concourse between the two hotels and go and then make that loop around that fountain went right in front of the Dolphin and come back, so you were aimed back toward the Swan, and then they stopped, and then the guests would come off and get on, and then away you go again, and kind of back the same way, but then instead of going right onto the boardwalk, you went up and over the bridge there that crosses the waterway, and then back at the far end of the yacht club, there was another little turnaround area, which I'm not sure if it is even still there. I don't think I've ever walked back there since all those years ago. But it was right next to the quiet pool in the yacht club area. There was another kind of little turnaround that you would loop around, and then that gave those guests a little bit closer stop. And then you would go back to Epcot. And so it was just kind of a constant, just like most of the Disney transportation, there were several vehicles operating, and you just try to keep yourself fairly well spaced out. I don't believe we ever ran more than two, but if I recall correctly, there were three total. Normally, I think during the peak periods in the mornings and in the evenings when there was more demand, then you would run two of them, just because it was kind of a long cycle, and that would allow the guests not to have too long of a wait. But the demand was generally not super high for them. I guess at park closing, it seems like right after Illuminations there would be a fair amount of demand, but I don't recall it being super high demand. But they were just 2-car trams, but the same as the tractors were the same as the ones in the parking lots with that front opening door. They were single speed, it was just forward, or I believe that they had reverse, but of course you couldn't back them up because of it's not a traditional trailer. The tram cars have 4-wheel steering, because they're designed for those long 7-car trams that they use in the parking lot. They were just 2 cars in the International Gateway area, but they were essentially identical to the ones out front, just shorter, and they didn't have a spieler on the back because it was such a short tram, just the 2 cars. You just relied on mirrors and the PA system to kind of keep people from trying to jump off or on, and there was a small spiel about the boardwalk resort to come, and I believe a little bit of information about the number of rooms in the hotels, etc. And the trams were painted in the very similar to the Swan and Dolphin, that coral and aqua paint scheme that they still kind of use. It was they were that color.
I've seen them as late as 1992. Do you know how long they ran?
I was there working in World Showcase until mid March of 1997, and I believe when I left they were still operating, or they had just gone. I mean, they definitely were operating through like 95, 96, and I believe left in 1997 they were still running. I am remembering now, toward the very end, I remember going to an event at Jelly Rolls, or not Jelly Rolls, the Atlantic Dance Hall when it was first opened, and they had an actual, they had the actual orchestra and stuff, like I said, shortly after most of that opened. And so at that point, I'm positive that the trams weren't running any longer. So,
any problem with people in the walkway? One of the things that occurred to us is that the slide at the yacht club, the people actually have to exit the pool area and cross that walkway that you would drive past.
So we didn't go on that side in front of the Yacht and Beach Club.
Okay.
We just turned. So if you look at kind of where the Skyliner is at Epcot, you would go up the hill, make that hard left along the front of the boardwalk till you get to where that end was. Then another left, and then left onto that kind of semicircular road down to the middle between the Swan and Dolphin, and then that's where you'd make the turnaround. Then go up again, and then there's that loop where the tennis court is. And when you departed there, you'd come back up the hill and then back over the boardwalk. So we never drove that path. If you look at the path,
so when you did the loop at the yacht club, you retraced your steps then back towards the boardwalk.
Yeah, across the boardwalk and then back to Epcot, and it was just a constantly running circle. But no, yeah, I mean
so at the Swan and Dolphin, did you turn around right in front of the Swan there, or did you actually go down the walkway between the Swan and Dolphin and turn around in front of the Dolphin?
You would go down the whole course between the two, and then make that loop or that large fountain. And I was thinking about it. I believe what we did is, I think in order to make the turns wide enough, like when we turned from, coming down the hill from the boardwalk, I believe we turned onto the left side, so it was kind of opposite of, when we got to that fountain with the circle around, we would make a right turn and go counterclockwise around it. And so it just kind of was always a little bit backwards from, driving your car or whatever. And, there was a little bit of foot traffic through there, but the majority of us had experience with the omnibuses inside World Showcase, and that you want to talk about worrying about guests walking in front of the vehicles. That was we never had any sort of issues. I mean, it was that area even today. Other than the area you mentioned in front of the Yacht and Beach Club, that area along the boardwalk before the resort was open, I mean, it was a ghost town. You rarely would see anybody even walking on that side. So there really wasn't too much trouble.
I'll tell you, Brian, it's such a cool story about how those trams worked, and we'll post this to the article, so make sure we make a note of this. We went back and we went into the some of our aerial archives and found some of the original aerial photos of the turnaround loop right next to the yacht there, which is so cool.
So the first listener, now I'm going to be there in a couple of weeks, but the first listener who gets a picture of themselves by the tennis court at the yacht club showing the remnants of the tram turnaround, make sure you tweet or Facebook or message us that picture.
That'd be great. So, and I'm never going to walk that between Swan and Dolphin now and not think about the story. You know what I mean?
And not think about the tram running down there, and doing the turnaround in that fountain right in front of the Dolphin. I mean, it's just so, it was mind-blowing as he's described it. So, but the funny thing, Todd, is listening to the interview, we all really had the impression that was gone by 92, 93. Right. And Scott's pretty sure that they ran pretty much up until around when the boardwalk was at least being constructed, if not open.
That's crazy. Yeah. And you figure that was a construction zone. They probably had some walls up and just buzz right by it and be done.
So that's but people fondly remember that tram.
Oh, yeah.
So it's one of those little forgotten pieces because it's been gone for a long time. I mean, you could never do it today. It'd be running over drunk people on the boardwalk and trying to steer around strollers.
They're not exactly easy to stop. And
the juggling fire guy.
Oh, and those rental bikes too, right?
So now everybody who's listened to the show can think of all the things we didn't mention about your favorite resorts and Crescent Lake spots.
That's right.
And send in your cards.
Send your complaints to JT at no.
Yes.
All right. Well, thank you, gentlemen, for all the effort and work on this. I just want to talk a couple seconds about the upcoming year. Like I said, we've got some great other episodes. If there's certain topics you want to hear, you can certainly email us at podcast@retrowdw.com. Last year was the year of the film, and you know what, guys? We got to do year of the film again. There is just still so much. There's year of the film. There's year of the video. There's a lot to do here.
It's the retro WDW.
It is.
decade.
It is. There it is. It's the film decade. But I want to announce a couple of things that we probably want to do here within the next couple months as we get into the new year. One, we will be doing another movie night coming up soon. We promised you a Thunder in Paradise movie night, so hopefully we'll get that in maybe by end of January here, and maybe early February once we can settle on a date and get that suited up for you. We will also be having a special world premiere of a film. More details on that coming later, but this is not going to be something you're going to want to miss. Perfect. So in order to celebrate this new film that's coming out that we were able to obtain, we're going to have a special night for donors to be able to watch that ahead of its general release. It is something that you are absolutely not going to want to miss, so keep an eye out for that. And we'll be doing other movie nights. We've got some other films that we recently restored. And Brian, you've got a whole new host of slides coming in left and right. You've been working on, man.
More came into. Well, what happened was there were a bunch of them we bought over a period of a month, and then all the shipping got derailed. So now I'm like getting things that I bought a month ago, and
they're all coming in.
I think we're finally.
I think we
up.
are.
I've gotten my last Christmas card, my last Christmas present.
That's right.
I think I'm finally.
And they came from New Hampshire, I believe, both of them. So,
by way of Paraguay,
something like that. And all of you, again, thank you very much for your donations that was able to bring Gertie into your homes and help us establish ourselves for the upcoming year. So much appreciated for all that. And of course, this year we will have some other options for donors to receive some special gifts as well. We've got some other ideas in the works. So with that said, how did you did have some new new T-shirt designs, I believe, last month. Let's tell our listeners about those.
So to tie in with our Thunder in Paradise, I did two Thunder in Paradise designs, and then also back in Lake Buena Vista there was a deli called Heidelberg's, and I actually was able to find a decent enough version of that logo in order to reproduce it. So got some good Thunder in Paradise, some good old Lake Buena Vista shopping village, and we're always coming up with new stuff. So I'm sure by the time this episode drops, will be one or two new things in the store, and we have sales coming up. There is a sale coming up, $13 for basic t-shirts. That's going to run from January 27th to January 29th. So if you're listening to this for that, hop on and get some of our stuff at a discount. And of course, go to the retrowdw.com/support us in order to find a link to those shirts and other goodies.
Excellent. Well, with that said, I know next month we'll be taking you back. Like I said, we got a lot of great things coming up this year. We do promise an Alien Encounter Part 2 episode where we want to do a couple different things. That will be coming up. We're probably going to take a tiptoe back into Epcot, over to the Magic Kingdom, and amongst a lot of other things. And it sounds like Pleasure Island might be one of those places we need to go.
I'm going to say, I'll throw down the gauntlet. We will do Part 1, because I'm sure this is going to take a long time. We will do a Part 1 of Pleasure Island.
There we go.
Next month to sort of start things off.
I mean, come on, let's be honest. Hal could make a two-parter out of the ticket and transportation.
That's true. You can make a two-parter out of anything.
And I will.
You can split it in half. And I
it's the ticket episode and the transportation episode.
And there's a whole center episode too. Oh man.
What's the name of that gift shop there? That's the
Mickey Smart.
Oh, the little one on
That's
the
it.
side. Yeah. Right where the Calcan Kennel Center used to be. So.
Yes.
All right, gentlemen, and thank you very much for your time this evening, and thank you to all of our listeners. Appreciate everything. If you can, give us a shout out on iTunes, and we'll be back next month with Pleasure Island Part 1. And with that, Brian, take us out.
Follow the Lake Buena Vista Historical Society on Twitter and Instagram at LBV History and on the web at lbvhistory.org. Follow Todd McCartney and Retro WDW on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Retro WDW. For all things Retro Disney World, including exclusive merchandise, visit us on the web at retrowdw.com. On Twitter, follow our web designer Jason Bartel of Deepwater Studios at JasonDWS, our announcer Andre Gardner at Andre Gardner, and follow our hosts Hal Bowers on Twitter and Instagram at GoAwayGreen, and on the web at kingdomofmemories.com. For JT Kujar on Twitter at LS1JT, on YouTube at Rubber City Motoring, and on the web at rubbercitymotoring.com. And you can find me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Brian P. Miles. Retro Disney World is the monthly podcast of the Lake Buena Vista Historical Society, a nonprofit, nonpartisan, tax-exempt 501c3 organization, and is not affiliated in any way with the Walt Disney Corporation or any of its subsidiary or affiliated entities.